In this video, I'm going to be showing you Vyssuals for Revit, a new Revit plugin that allows you to visualize parametric data in 3D space. So what this means is that all of your Revit data, instead of being locked away in endless columns of text, now can be visualized in the 3D space within Revit for easy use. Let's go. Now, if you would like to check out Vyssuals for Revit, it's available on balkanarchitect.com. I'm going to link it up in the cards above and then also down in the description of this video. Now, this video is going to be a little bit different. Instead of me showing you the highlights of Vyssuals for Revit, I've actually invited the creator of this plugin, Isket Schindel, to show us all of the powerful functionality of Vyssuals for Revit. Now, before this demo, we have also recorded a segment where I introduce Isket and his journey from going from an architect into software developer for Revit. I think it's really interesting to learn what's the path of how somebody can go and can make that transition and go into software development as an architect. Now, the full interview is going to be available on balkanarchitect.com for all of our community members. So if you have a subscription to balkanarchitect.com, you will have access to this community. Now, without any further ado, let's jump straight into Revit.
Vyssuals is a web application, and you can access it by going to vyssuals.com, and it'll bring up this page here. You can learn how it works and stuff. What you're really interested in is you just create your account, you log in, and then you'll be brought to a page that looks like this. This is the app. And I try to make it in a way that you're guided throughout the process. So right now, just kind of do what it tells you. You should connect to Revit. So you should download and install the Revit connector. Then you open a model and click the Start button in the Visual selection in the Add-ins tab. And then you click Update Data. And currently supported versions are 22 to 25. We can talk about 26 later maybe and see what the roadmap is there. But currently it's 2025. And you download your connector. That downloads it. You run this, you install it, and then you switch to Revit. You come into the Add-ins tab, and you press this button, Start. It thinks for a bit because it's building the connection to the website. And this is a local connection, so none of your data goes over the internet. It's all local. There's no problem with privacy compliance or anything like that. This is just by design, and it also makes everything much faster. Okay, and then we again follow what it says. Switch to Revit and click Update Data in the Visuals window. I will do just that. So I come here and click Update Data. It thinks for a little bit. It's going through the full model and grabbing all the data from it. And it's pushing it to the website, and it gives you a selection of charts right away. This is kind of a random selection from a bunch of pre-made charts that Vyssuals comes with by default. And depending on what was visible in your 3D view, you will get a different selection here.
And just a quick question, do we need to be in the 3D view in order to view all of this data, or we can be in any other view? How does that work?
Yeah, so you can be in a floor plan, you can be in a section, in an elevation, or in a 3D view. So basically, any view where you have real model elements, where you have where it's showing you actual 3D geometry. And by that, I mean a floor plan is also showing you 3D geometry, right? It's just cut.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And then I guess the first thing that you want to do is you're interested maybe in the wall types here. And there's this button here, this antenna thing, and you just click that. And it sends all the color information over to Revit. It isolates your view so that you can work with this information nicely. And yeah, it shows you what wall types you're using where. Or if you would want to do this with windows, you just take this guy here, apply the colors, and now you see stuff about windows. And then maybe you're interested in, okay, what is like this stuff here, this red stuff. So you can click on one of the bars in this chart, and it will select the elements in Revit for you so that you could, yeah, perform an action on it, change the types, change the width, whatever you want. It's really a working tool.
So we
And if you don't
can
want the colors,
basically get we get the data from the Revit model by, in this case, by category, or in this case by category plus width, and then we have different widths, so we get different colors, and by just clicking on the color we make a selection to make edits.
exactly, yeah. And you can edit any of those charts by just clicking on it, and it'll flip it up into the editor. And for this chart, for example, you can see that it's using the Windows category. You can put as many categories as you want into a chart to make kind of like multi-category schedules, like real multi-category schedules, not what Revit gives you.
So we can build, like, let's say, a schedule that shows us a window and door count by width or something like that.
Exactly. Yes,
Okay,
exactly.
perfect.
So we can add the doors in here, for example. And now if we bring this to the dashboard again and we do this, we see windows
There we
and
go.
doors now. And they're colored by their width. Of course, the parameter that we're showing has to exist on both categories, but I think this is kind of self-explanatory. So like maybe planting and windows wouldn't make sense because the planting doesn't have a width parameter in Revit. Yeah, and then, so this is just a default bit of charts. And there is this list here on the right that you can use, and it's sort of a library of defaults. Let's stay with the walls because that's the most obvious example. So you can click on walls, and it brings up all the available pre-made charts that Vyssuals comes with that are possible with your current data set. So for example, if you wanted to know the total wall count, you just click on it and you have it on your dashboard. Or you want to explore further, you come back to walls. Maybe you want to check the room bounding property. You go there, you apply the colors again, and there you go. And then maybe, okay, what are the walls that have room bounding property no? You can, like, by clicking on it, you can select them and then maybe change them into, yes, they are room bounding.
Okay, interesting. So for each of these categories that's listed on the other side, we have all of these pre-built templates that we can use and perhaps edit if necessary.
Exactly. Yeah. So once those charts are on the dashboard, you can click on them, and they're just like any regular chart. You can mess them up. You can change them, whatever you want. You can change the type of the chart to your liking. You can change what parameters it's using. You can change the colors on it. You can change how it behaves in the Revit viewport. Should it be isolating? Should it be not isolating? And this is kind of maybe the next step would be to define full dashboards that you always want to come back to. Or maybe even clearer, we stay with this section here. Before we move into like general setups, this section here is maybe also very interesting. So it's what I call the quick filters. And you can put a parameter in here. In this case, it's the level parameter, and it shows you all the values that this parameter has. So in this case, all the levels. And when you click on something, your full dashboard filters, and your Revit view also filters, so that you're now only seeing stuff on level 2. And if you want to add the stuff from level 3, you just click on level 3 as well. You see all the dashboard has kind of adjusted, and now you also get the walls on level 3 with this.
So it's like a filter that's filtering out your entire dashboard for specific parameters, I guess.
Exactly, for specific values.
Values. Wow.
So this can be either used to just explore what are all the values that I have in a certain parameter, but you can also think about like this down here as showing you what are all the different values in my parameter, in this case the type of the walls. So this is listing all the wall types here. And this is just another way of kind of slicing and dicing your data. And you can put any parameter you want in this left-hand side. So this currently is showing the levels, but when I come over to this gear icon, I can literally take any parameter in my model and do that. Let's go with, so we're using walls only at the moment. So let's maybe see what kind of fire rating information there is. So this would be all the different fire rating information in your model. And now you could apply a filter for this specific fire rating to your full dashboard and also to your 3D view.
Okay. So that it would show all of the walls or all of the everything that we have for that specific fire rating, and all of the data that's kind of picking up within a dashboard.
Yeah, and currently you can see I clicked on 180 minutes and nothing is showing anymore because it seems like, there's some, the windows do have this.
Have that
so
value.
let's look at the windows. So the windows have this particular fire rating parameter, but it seems like that, for example, the walls don't have this fire rating parameter, but instead they use something else. And I'm like, wait a minute, shouldn't this be like more organized maybe? And then we can see, okay, so the actual walls, they do have the 2-hour fire rating. So there seems like a mismatch in this model, whereas for some object categories, it's in minutes, and then for others, it's in hours. And you're like, okay, maybe that is exactly what you want. But I don't know. I find it a bit confusing here. And I would probably, if I was a BIM manager, I would set up a template that shows people this kind of information and kind of points them to this fact that they're using confusing fire rating information in this model.
Yeah, so basically the charts here and the filters are showing us if we have some mismatches in terms of the units being used or just the methodology that's being used to input data inside of the model, and then we can either have a meeting about that or make direct changes to the model accordingly.
Exactly. And you can always verify by just coming into Revit and looking at the properties. In this case, the fire rating is a type parameter, I believe. Yeah, so here it says the 2-hour rating. And then when we switch back to the windows, and I go to the window here, and the fire rating is probably also in the types. Yeah, and here says 180 minutes in the fire rating. And yeah, if I would have done this through, I don't know, clicking on the Revit model and trying to figure this out, or through schedules, I would have had 2 schedules, and maybe it wasn't so obvious that there is this mismatch.
Yeah, and here it's like clear. Yeah, and just looking at how here we can show different different templates or different different colors that we can apply to the model to show different parameters and values. How does the actual change of the graphics in Revit happen? So how does Revit, how does Vyssuals affect Revit and make changes, and how do we go back from those changes? And yeah, just the whole kind of graphics portion in Revit. How does that work?
Yeah. So let's apply colors again. Let's take this one because we've been using this. Let's color the walls by their type. And it's a very simple method. It's not filters because with filters, you get this problem that once a value changes, they don't pick up on that value. So I think this is a benefit of visuals, that it always picks up new values and colors it new. And also filters tend to make a model quite slow. And the lightest way, the easiest way to do this is really this override graphics in view by element. And then you have all the colors in here. And if, yeah, this is what Visuals does. It's very simple, but it's doing this on a large scale.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. I see it changed the 3D view or the faces of the walls, but I also see the with the cut patterns and everything, so that would appear in floor plan views. So yeah, it's going to pretty much in all views where we need to make this change, it's going to appear. And also it does some sort of temporary hide isolate in order to show only the walls in this case.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, this is the setting that I was mentioning previously. It's these settings here. So there's a setting for isolate category, categories. It's plural because whatever categories you put in here, they will be isolated. And then isolate elements is kind of a next step on top of that, because you also have advanced filters. And with these advanced filters, they work like filters on Revit schedules. You can drill down or narrow down your selection of elements even more to, let's say, only the walls on level 2, or only the walls that have fire rating of 2 hours or something. And at that point, you can decide if you want to keep all the walls visible, or if you really want to just focus on those walls that are in this particular chart. Because sometimes you might need the additional context of all the other walls, and sometimes you might just want to focus on this specific thing. And then you have the X-ray thing. If I click on that, it's thinking for a bit, and then it does the see-through thing, kind of what you would expect from an X-ray.
Yeah.
With the skull icon here.
That's cool.
Yeah, and then you mentioned the cut pattern. So if I switch over to this view here, and I update my data from this view.
Okay, there we go.
You see? There we go. It's doing the same thing, but in floor plan. And this is where the cut pattern comes in. Quite handy. And again, if you don't want the isolation stuff, you can turn this off.
Okay, and then it's just going to keep everything plus give us the the overrides. Okay, that's really cool. And now kind of moving forward from using all of this data to perhaps make some informed decisions to figure out if there are any mistakes. Can we use this visualized data in any way for, let's say, presentations, for client meetings or something like that? Is there any way that we can extract these visualizations and these graphs and use them later on?
Yeah, absolutely. There's two ways that you can get the visualization out of Visuals. One is just by this download chart as an image button. Click on that, and you get a little image file that you can load back into Revit. Or you can put this into your InDesign report. Basically, yeah, whatever workflow you use, it's going to be different for everyone.
Yeah, of course.
So in this case, you would be printing your chart with the color overrides on, and printing your floor plan, putting that into your InDesign report, and then also taking your chart and putting it next to it. This is kind of a typical design office workflow, I would say. Most of the design work isn't done, or most of the design layouting isn't done in Revit typically. It's done in another software. But you could also just take this image and load it back into Revit and place it on a sheet. And the second way is you can export the full dashboard. So you come over to this little hamburger menu here, and then you export your full dashboard as a PDF. And you can share this with your manager or your project manager, whoever needs this.
Okay, so that's really cool. So you can extract all of this data and use it for for meetings, which is, I'm guessing, the most important part for using all of the data. So yeah, it looks really interesting, and something kind of comes to mind. I see all of these kind of possibilities that you give us as templates. I'm guessing this is developed through what the users are using it for, or what are kind of some of the most popular use cases. Do you have any experience in terms of like what are the workflows that people tend to use, or that companies prefer to use, or something that you've noticed perhaps that you didn't intend initially, but kind of companies figured out, or users figured out? So do you have any kind of recommended guidelines or workflows for using visuals?
I really leave it up to anyone to just go wild. But what I have found, what the biggest selling point for most people is quality check of your model. You can do design work, and I can also later on maybe show how you could do massing options and use visuals to kind of measure what your floor area is, or like when you have when you do massing and you have those cubes and stuff, how do you hit your targets for department areas? But since most offices that I have talked to use Rhino for that kind of work, they see the main value here in quality control. So really exactly what we have been doing, looking at the fire rating, looking at the element types, the wall types, looking at, let's say, the let's go to the walls section again and take the base constraint. So that's the what level, or maybe even better, something that is totally invisible in a floor plan, but you can show it, is the base offset. So is my wall floating or not? And you can see most of the walls have offset 0 here. So I can apply the colors. And then I would see, okay, so the yellow ones are all with offset 0. And the blue ones here, this is offset minus 2.66 feet. In this case, it follows your units that you have in your model setup. So you can use it with feet and with meters. Doesn't care, it just follows your project units.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, that's the quality checking. And for that, I think for quality checking, what makes this even more powerful is, let's clear all our charts. And then we can come over to the templates. Currently, there's 2 global templates that are available for everyone right off the gate. But I will be adding more and more. And also, I'm super happy about feedback, like what is the typical workflows that you guys want to do. And for example, we can get information about the structural properties of our model. And for that, I'm going to change back here. I'm going to quickly apply this one here. So the structural material. Wow, there's planting that has a structural material.
Okay, so here we have some discrepancies in this design.
Wait a minute, I'm going to update my data and see if this is. Yeah,
it's there.
How the heck? Okay.
And this is the sample model in Revit.
Sure, why not? I mean, I guess a tree also has some structural properties.
I mean, a tree is a structural material by itself, I guess.
We have fooled ourselves. It's the null property. So it also shows you what elements don't have any.
So if it's like set to default, or if it's just missing.
Yeah, so I'm gonna take the full model over again, update my data here. because it's always taking what you see in the view. And this last update was done with a limited set of elements, so it only grabbed those and sent them over to the data visualization. But now I have shown everything again. I take the full model, I push it into the data side, and now we can apply the
now we
colors
have
back.
more.
And you see that there's this huge green bar here. And okay, of course it doesn't have it. That I'm glad that this is the way. And in this particular scenario, I would probably just take them out, the null values. Either I have a chart set up that particularly checks for null values, because maybe I want to check walls and floors for null values. We can actually do that. So we take this, we go to walls, and then we go to floors, and then floors. Okay. And now we can see we still have some null values.
Okay, so here, just to kind of explain, because kind of a few things happened really quickly. So we did run this check to see the structural material of the walls, and that huge bar kind of indicated that, okay, so we have a large number of values that have no, or that of properties or model elements that have no value here. Okay, so here when we have all of these model elements with no values, is this a mistake or should it be this way? So then we're filtering it down. Okay, so just for the walls, where do we have no value? Perhaps for some of these walls we do actually want to have a value, or in this case I think we've added the floors as well. And then we're kind of checking, okay, so for trees perhaps it's okay to have no value, but for walls we might want to have value. So you're really playing around with the charts and seeing all of these kind of weird spikes, I guess, and thinking, okay, so there might be something here that we need to check to see if everything is kind of according to what we want to achieve.
Exactly. We can simplify this a bit by taking out the floors and just looking at the walls now. And now, so depending on how many different values you have, the colors change. So now the structural material null is red in this case, and you can see that Revit has a graphics bug. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, so those walls don't have a structural material, the red ones. And at this point, if I would have to clean up this model, I would probably go into Revit and really look at this wall and say, like, okay,
what's
what
going on?
wall type is this? Rain screen with insulation on metal stud. And then if I was the architect building this building or designing this building, I would know very well what this wall is designed to do and if it should have a structural material or not. And also on top of that, does my company actually care about the structural material or not?
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. So, for example, in this case, it could be a situation where a company would use two walls, one to present the structural part of the wall and another to include all of the finish layers. This is something that some companies do, some don't. And then in this case, if this is something that you do and it's just the finish layers, it's okay not to have the structural layer. But if it's the wall that actually is a supporting wall, let's say, and it's the only wall there, well, there might be a mistake happening right there and something that should probably be fixed.
Exactly, yeah. And as the BIM team or the BIM manager for your project, you would set up the charts for your team to take only those parameters that your team really cares about. Because as we said, maybe you don't care about the structural material, but you just want to use the is structural property or something. And you discuss that with your BIM manager, you set up the charts and the dashboards accordingly, and then your full team can go through them, and they're not confused with any additional properties. Because if you look at the properties here in Revit and you're wondering, like, okay, which of these properties is actually relevant for my BIM project? And you as the architect might not have been involved with the BIM execution plan. So you don't really know what was agreed upon. Which properties do we have to care about? And with Vyssuals, the BIM team would set up charts and dashboards according to, let's say, the BIM execution plan, and really just focus on those parameters that were agreed upon in the BIM execution plan and that you have to deliver with precision. And the other ones, the other parameters, you just don't care about.
Yeah,
No
okay,
need to
that's
do
that's
extra work.
yeah, that's so powerful. Yeah. So when you have your BIM execution plan, the BIM manager would perhaps create some guidelines to tell architects, okay, you need to do this, pay attention to this, we don't care about that, and so on. And instead of this being like a hefty PDF that nobody reads and then mistakes happen, here the BIM manager wouldn't really have to prepare that sort of file. Instead, they would just prepare charts and then, okay, so if it's picking up red on this chart, make sure to fix it. Or is there? Yeah, I'm guessing like you can have just a document saying, okay, so for this particular chart, if red, change that, and for that chart, if red, change this, and so on. And
Exactly.
it's a great way, I think, for architects to work, because instead of thinking, oh, is it up to LOD 350 and what's LOD 350? Okay, so do we need to, and going through all of these documents, oh, it's red, change this,
Fix it.
perfect. Yeah, okay, I
Yeah,
really
or
like
don't
that.
fix it, or
Yeah, or
ignore it because
ignore
it's
it.
fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And you can say here, for example, a structural check or something, and then this could be like a go through all the charts. Oopala, I can't type. Charts one by one and check if the colors look okay.
Yeah, perfect. Okay,
And
so
that
yeah,
will
a
be kind
complete
of
message.
your your manual to your. But now, of course, you sit in the same project space and you
Yeah.
talk a bit, and still, please talk.
Yeah, okay, we're not trying to eliminate all contact between
Mhm.
architects and BIM managers. Yeah, I really like that approach where it's very simple, very, very clear, and yeah, it allows the BIM manager to have control while relinquishing control in a way where they're not kind of completely involved into the model. They can let architects kind of check themselves as they're working with, which I think
Yeah,
makes the process a lot more comfortable than having to kind of have that talk at the end of the week about all of the stuff you messed up during that week and
or you
what you
still
should.
do that.
Yeah.
Um, One company that I'm working with is they have a workflow in mind where they have the BIM team specifying the templates
Hmm.
that the architect should use and apply, but then the BIM team wants to check themselves.
Hmm.
And both can use the same templates just at different points in time. So
Hmm.
the BIM team sets up the templates, tells the architects every Wednesday or whatever, they check the model. Hopefully the architects do it. And then every Friday, the BIM guys come in and check the templates as well. And then you have like a four eyes principle.
Yeah, yeah.
And you can use the same way of looking at a model, but with different people.
Okay, okay, that's really powerful. Kind of having that double checking being done for everything. Okay, that's really powerful. Yeah, and okay, so yeah, so basically for the company, you prepare your templates, and this is then how you implement them.
Yeah, and I maybe should show how
Mhm.
it's done.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's again clear everything out here. And so I would recommend that you always start with the defaults. You can
Mhm.
come in and click add chart and like go through all this yourself, but most of the time it's just way easier to look at, okay, what are we generally looking at? We're looking at doors. And let's take again, let's stay with a fire rating. And then maybe for the doors as well, or maybe for the windows, you want to come in and also do, actually, let's also do fire rating for windows. So
Mhm.
we come in here and then we group by fire rating. Okay, so they have 0.5 hours and nothing. So let's say this is something that the BIM team wants the people to check because it's in the BIM execution plan. You add a title, whatever, and then you come over to templates, and then depending on the account type that you have, if you're in an individual user or if you're a BIM manager, you can save this for everyone in your office or just for yourself. I'm going to save it for everyone in the office. I say save new, and now this configuration of the dashboard is available for everyone in the office. And now I could come in and clear the charts, and then at a later point in time, I come back to templates, go to from my organization, and then I can apply this. And of course, you would give it a proper name. So this does not take the data. It only takes the configuration. So what category do we want to use? What parameter do we want to put on the x-axis? What parameter do we want to put on the y-axis? And so on. It does not take your data. So the data always comes in from the model, and then you can apply this chart template or this dashboard template onto the data.
Okay, that's really powerful. Yeah, and then you can continue to customize it if necessary along the way, or change anything.
Yeah, and you can even specify what parameter you want to go along with it as the quick filter. Trying to come up with a good example here. I guess in this case, level would be more appropriate. So as a BIM manager, you would say, okay, let's do the fire rating checks, and let's give the users the level quick filter with it so that they can skim through level by level really quickly.
Okay, so if you're working on the project in stages or something like that, you can just focus on one level, or as you said, if you want to go level by level, just to make it a bit easier to focus on specific model elements, you can do that with these quick filters. Okay, that's really powerful. Okay, is there anything else that you would like to kind of share as some of the features that you really like about Vyssuals, or that you really like to use?
Absolutely. So two things I want to show. One is the 3D rooms and areas, because this is something that is notoriously difficult to check. Yes, you have color schemes in your Revit model that you can apply to via a view template through to all your floor plans, but still you need to go into each floor plan and check what is going on. And if you want to quickly swap out the view template, this is a little bit of effort involved. And and sometimes it's just better to see it in 3D. And for whatever reason, Autodesk is not giving us the option to show rooms in 3D, and I really hope that they will do that soon. Maybe if we're lucky, it's in the 26th release. I don't know. Maybe you know.
Yeah, we'll see.
But for now, I made this button here that just brings up all the rooms as sort of proxy objects in your 3D view, and then I'm quickly going to make them not transparent because I always don't like that this model has them transparent. So I'll come into object styles, go to the massing category, and just edit the default material for those, which is always flow.
Yeah, just make it default solid.
Yeah, reduce the transparency to 0, and now we should have these wonderful blue boxes. Okay. So I clear all my charts out, and then and actually now I do autosync because I want to show you something else. So there's two ways to synchronize the data between Revit and Vyssuals. One is to use this update data button, which is one time, because you say now I want new data, or you say autosync, and then it's working like Enscape, where Enscape is always syncing your geometry and you always see your changes, and this is doing the same here.
So does it have like a trade-off? For example, with working with Dynamo, you can have kind of run now or run all the time. Does it have the trade-off of being slow if you have auto sync, or is it just just your preferred workflow depending on which charts you're using?
I would say the same guidelines or the same principles you apply in Dynamo and Enscape when it's constantly syncing also apply here. It is something that will trigger every time you make a change. You might want that, but it's always there's a calculation running, right? So there is going to be some lag or some a little bit of waiting time. And if you're working with really big models, I would probably shy away from the autosync, unless you have really isolated your view to only show like a few things. Then the autosync is probably fine because it's just doing a few things. I would see where. It also depends on your computer. If your computer is powerful, mine is not. Mine is like from 2015 and it's running an i5. It's like it's an old machine, but it's running, right?
Yeah, it's running and it's performing really nicely. So yeah, it speaks about the how the software is quick.
Yeah. So now you have the a rooms category here, and you can come over and you can do the same thing that we did previously, but just for rooms. So let's take the room name, for example. Let's check room names. And we push the colors onto the model. And let's say this guy here is wrong, right? This was green. We select it and we get a little pop-up window because, as I said, these boxes there we see are proxy objects.
Yeah.
And this now is asking me, it's telling me proxy selected 1. Do you want to select the underlying rooms or areas? So it's asking you if it should kind of take the thing that you selected and actually select the actual room that was used to create this box.
Yeah, and just to explain to you, if people are not familiar with this kind of common issue with Revit where rooms are not displayed as 3D. So basically here Vyssuals is creating this, as you said, proxy of 3D model, but it's not a Revit element, I guess. So it's just asking us, do we want to connect this with the Revit element, which is the actual just room?
Yes, exactly. And if I say yes, you see that the green box is no longer highlighted, but you can see at the bottom right, I have one element selected here. And also it's showing me rooms 1. So I have selected one room. And then I can go in and change something. So currently we are showing the room name. So we're coloring by room name. And if I want to make a change here, let's do something else. Let's say this is a corridor. Probably not true. And Vyssuals is now sort of updating the proxy, and then it's updating the dashboard, and then it's going back into the Revit model. And what you can see what happened, all the charts are blank now, and that is due to the fact that Vyssuals will always take what you see in the Revit view. And in this case, you're only looking at rooms.
Yeah.
So you only have rooms in your data visualization. And you see the color has updated. And this is now the color of the corridor. We can also click on this and see, okay, now it's this. And yeah.
Okay, that's really powerful.
Yeah. So that is one thing. And then maybe one last thing. And I would like to switch the model for that to show that kind of stuff. Yep, it's going back. Okay, cool. Come over to this and then take this model here. Yep. Okay, so let's clear everything out here. So we have a blank start, add-ins, and pull up Vyssuals again. One thing I want to show is that I mentioned earlier that Revit has this limit of only showing kind of one category per schedule. But sometimes you want to do a calculation based on a total of one schedule and a total of another schedule, and then do a calculation.
Definitely.
So a common use case is maybe you have, if you have to deliver certain ratios for a building permit. For example, there is a ratio between the gross area of a building and the net room area of a building. So what I've done now is I have turned on the 3D rooms. I have turned on the areas of a specific area scheme. And then I update the data into Vyssuals. And we can ignore the default charts for now. And then I have set up a template in my personal templates. And this is something that I made previously, and I called it net versus gross ratio. And if I click on it, you see it's got three charts. One is called BGF, which is German for gross floor area. One is NUF, which is the German for the net area of a building. And then you have the ratio between those two. So this is a new chart type that we haven't looked at yet. It's a ratio chart. So it's this last one, the percentage here, and it can take one total and divide it by another total. And the way you set it up is you make two total charts, one like this. This one is grabbing, this one is working for the areas, and then it's showing the area parameter from the areas, Revit logic. And totaling that up, and then this chart here is taking the rooms, and it's taking the area parameter, and it even has a filter. It's like the kind of the area is NUF, which is again the German word for net area. So and then you can get this ratio of two independent categories, but you have a ratio. This is something that I've always found frustrating, and I always come to this point in Revit where I'm like, yeah, now I would need a basic calculation between two totals, but I can't. And with Vyssuals, I try to fix this.
Yeah, that's really powerful. Yeah, I always find it annoying when you create your schedule and then you get some totals and you need to actually use that information somehow. But in Revit, you really don't have a way to do it, so you have to either export to Excel or just bring up your calculator and do it manually every time. Whereas this is just giving you a real-time solution, and I'm guessing you can build out multiple of these and then just have a very powerful calculation engine working on the side, and then as you're making changes to the model, this is updating and giving you the data. And yeah, for early stage design, I'm guessing that's where this is the most powerful.
Exactly. Yeah, and then speaking of early stage design, we can jump into this last example that I have, which is another model. And let's use the metric one. Oh yeah, it's updating, but it's a small model, so it shouldn't take too long. And this is about massing studies in Revit. I know most people do this in Rhino, but there are definitely some people who are purists and they like to do everything in Revit. And I have done massing studies in Revit a lot. And I really enjoyed it actually, because I don't know, I like all the data that I get for free while doing it.
Yeah, I mean, Revit massing can be annoying sometimes, especially when I see people going from SketchUp into Revit and they don't like how it's working quite differently than SketchUp, perhaps a bit less intuitive. But the upside is that you're getting all of this data that you can then use, analyze, and make informed design decisions, which is what it's all about.
Yeah. And we have done competitions with this. Basically, yeah, we were just sitting there and sort of looking at a schedule and tweaking our massing, but it always felt like a workaround. And then once you go, as we said, into those ratios, you're then stuck, and then you want to do the tweaks.
It just brings in so many extra steps that you're kind of losing the intuitive side of it. And then something that I've seen myself do is, if making a change takes so many extra steps, you kind of end up pushing yourself into the direction of making a change that's going to give you the right number, less, and that's kind of your priority, less than making it actually work with the design and having the correct number simultaneously. So you're kind of you're putting the design at second stage, and then the first thing is like, okay, I need to get that number right. But if it's an intuitive system where it's automatically giving you all of this, then you can focus more on the model and getting the best results.
Yeah, and also it's introducing possible points of failure. Every time
Mhm.
you copy something between A and B, you can mess it
Yeah,
up.
definitely.
So this one is a super simple model. It has some design options, and then it has a linked file. And yeah, so let's clear those charts. And again, I start up Vyssuals, and I will turn on the autosync.
Mhm.
And one thing that I haven't shown yet is Vyssuals is keeping track of what we do. So
Mhm.
there's this timeline chart here, and this is it's recording what data
Mhm.
comes in, and it can show a history of that. So let's say we want to track the floor area of our mass floors over time. And we have
Mhm.
one data point currently. That's because there's just one point here. But now, when I have autosync on and I switch through the design options, so this one is the one that we were looking at before because it's the primary option. I go into a different one. You can see how this is tracking.
Mhm.
Um, and this would be the workflow that I would be using for massing options. So let's say I want to visualize the by usage. This one is duplicate. We don't need that. So yep. And then let's take this guy off and this guy off. Okay, that's more like
Mhm.
how I want it. Yeah, and then we go into a different design option, and maybe we come in here and we change our design option. We change something. And you can see, okay,
Mhm.
now previously it was this, now it's this. Um,
So you can
yeah,
basically
and this
keep
is
track of everything what you're doing, and how that's, you're actually keeping track of the data as you're changing the model.
exactly. So it allows you to sort of do historical data and show to someone else, hey, we've been improving.
Yeah. Okay. I think when I think about projects, especially when I think back at my university days, and for a lot of students, like Bjarke Ingels type diagrams is what's really popular, and what's kind of what everybody's striving through to with their kind of initial designs during school. And yeah, something like this, I see it as a very powerful tool where you can perhaps then export your floor area over time, and you can export kind of images out of Revit for each one of those. And then you can say, okay, so we run analysis, we have 20 kind of different design iterations. This is how we got to the best one, and this is the whole process. Here are the charts. Here is the chart over time. So yeah, I think that that's so powerful.
Exactly, yeah. Now that you mentioned the Bjarke Ingels diagrams, I was trying to do the same in uni, and at some point I figured out that you could do it in Enscape as well.
Mhm.
It's so cool, but you can use Enscape to create those kind of bird's eye white
Uh-huh.
diagrams, and then
Yeah.
you just pull them into InDesign and quickly trace
Yeah, do
over
the
some edges.
outline.
It looks so great. This is so
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, it's really powerful. Yeah.
Yeah, all
Okay.
right. I think that's all I wanted to show.
Mhm.
You have a bit of an overview about your data sources. You can download all your data because it's your data, but I think this is so. I think we've covered enough
Mhm. Okay,
um,
perfect.
for
Yeah, yeah.
today.
It's so interesting, and it looks really powerful. But I think the most value comes when you actually start playing around with it, and then you get your own ideas about your workflow, how you can get the most out of it by utilizing different charts and different approaches. Now, just speaking about this kind of further, what are some of your plans on what are your plans for future development, and in which direction would you like to take Vyssuals moving forward?
Yeah, so I am very curious about more feedback on this tight integration with Revit, because I think that's like the strongest point currently, that is really unique and that nothing else can do at the moment. So getting feedback on what improvements people really want to see in this direct interaction with Revit, that would be very cool to get in touch with the community, because I'm community based. I like to listen to people. I like to be quick. That is definitely one thing. And then on the longer end, I am thinking about, and we touched on this previously, where you clean up your model at specific points in time, and then you do a data drop. And this part, the data drop, and what comes next, that's something that I would like to explore with Vyssuals, because I think there's great potential for keeping a project history outside of your Revit model, that is accessible within your company, that is accessible through other tools, also Power BI maybe, because Power BI can do stuff that Vyssuals can't. Vyssuals can do stuff that Power BI can't. And I think there's great potential of just doing these data drops, having them in a widely accessible format. Maybe Vyssuals can then take those data drops, compare to data drops, but that would be then moving away from a direct Revit model connection more into like a bigger picture, a project level data history. So less one Revit file, more, okay, what did our project look like over X years? And how does that data relate to other projects that we have? And maybe organizational level decision making in the end. Okay, how many people do we need for this kind of project? What was the square footage that we had there? Sort of really condensing everything and sort of going up the pyramid, all based on this model data that came from Revit, and then step by step abstracting it, aggregating it, and feeding it into a pipeline that is really valuable for an office. This is something that is in the back of my head, and I'd be super happy also to develop this alongside with bigger offices, for example.
That sounds really powerful. I like the idea of taking the kind of the simplicity that Vyssuals gives us for just your Revit model, and then turning that into, let's say, a company dashboard for Revit and for projects, and just leveling that up. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, moving back to the point where you said that you're looking for more feedback. This is where I would just like to ask the audience as to test out Vyssuals. There's a free trial. Test it out, provide feedback, and then of course, if this is something that you want to use, that you see as something that would be valuable within your workflow, then you can get it for the long term. But yeah, definitely provide feedback, because that's what actually improves the tool in the long term.
Exactly, yes. Feedback is so important to any developer, and there are also developers that actually listen to feedback and not just like
Yeah. Sometimes it can feel that way, but it really depends from company to company and from developer to developer. Yeah. Oh, one more thing that I would like to ask you, just because we're recording this as kind of Revit 2026 is going to be released really soon. You've mentioned that the current versions supported are Revit 2022 through Revit 2025. Do you have any timeline or expectations when 2026 connector will be released?
So I think it will be probably quite soon after the release of Revit 2026, because I don't know the exact changes that come with the Revit API with 26, but the major shift has happened from 24 to 25. So I expect that there would only be minor fixes or touch-ups that need to happen. Maybe it even runs as it is, and I don't have to do anything. But I hope that it can be done within like 1 or 2 months after the release of Revit, and then it's tested enough on my end, and so that you can use it safely.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, we'll definitely add a note in the comments and a pinned comment later on once the 2026 connector is released. But yeah, for now, definitely testing it in 2025, or well, now it's just it's the current year for Revit. So yeah, definitely something that's really powerful, and I would definitely recommend to everybody to test it out. So yeah, thank you so much for this presentation. It was really fun. For me, this was the first kind of interview style like this, or interview style video, and I hope that everybody has enjoyed it. Thank you for being a great first guest on kind of sort of a Balkan Architect podcast, if we can call it that way. But yeah, thank you so much. Do you have any kind of last comments or words for our for the audience?
Yeah, please go try it out and provide feedback. It really means a lot. And I really do hope that we can just make all our lives a bit easier with this. I do care. I've been in the seat as the architect, as the BIM manager. I know the pain, and I really want to make a change here.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Okay, perfect. Okay, and yeah, thank you everybody for watching, and we'll be back with another regular Balkan Architect tutorial next week.
Thank you for watching, guys. Make sure to check out my website, balkanarchitect.com, for more Revit courses. There I have over 120 hours of content, and I'm adding more each week. Make sure to subscribe for more videos, and also I've added a video over there that might interest you as well.